You are listening to Real Men Feel with Andy Grant. Real Men Feel encourages men to allow and express all of their emotions. Despite what you may have been taught, all emotions do serve you. Real Men Feel is committed to engaging in discussions that most men aren't having, but all men can benefit from. All links mentioned in each episode are in the show notes found on the blog at realmenfeel.org. Now, let's get to it. Hello, and welcome to another edition of Real Men Feel. This is your host, Andy Grant. Real Men Feel exists to remind men that they are emotional beings. Whether or not you want emotions, whether or not you believe you have them or been taught that they're wrong or not good, but you have them. And I really want to have men recognize that emotions are okay. In fact, they're better than okay. When you can be in a place where you're willing to feel and express every emotion that arises in you, your life, you can navigate life better. Right? Things flow better. Emotions aren't just something that happen to us. They're really there to help us. If you can think of it as kind of your internal GPS system, and that your emotions are reminding you that you are in or out of alignment with your higher self, with your soul, with spirit, with whatever word resonates with you, that reminds you that you're not just a bag of meat. Right? And my guest today, he knows he's not a bag of meat. I'm very glad to have him here today.
Right.
So I want to welcome men's health and performance coach and podcaster, Anthony Treas.
Hey, Andy, it is great to be here with you. I'm excited about the information we're going to be talking about today. And, I just want to extend my appreciation for what you are doing with the Real Men Feel podcast and getting this information out to more men. So fantastic work. I'm very excited.
Great. Thank you for that. And yeah, so let's start. So you have Strong Men Coaching and a Strong Men podcast.
That's
so
right.
To start,
Yes.
like what does a strong man mean to you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. What a strong man means to me is somebody who is confident in themselves and that they are able to deal with life's difficulties. Oftentimes, life is life, right? We can't go away from things that are that happen in life, whether it's, relationship issues, work issues, fulfillment, happiness, these sorts of things. And a strong man is able to deal with those difficulties and deal with those ups and downs. And that's what I think a strong man is. And also a strong man understands the importance of self-care. Oftentimes we put ourselves to the side. It's not, and some men may think, well, that's, being selfish, but at the same time, one of the analogies that I like to use is from the airline safety speech, right? That they say, you got to put the mask on yourself before trying to help other people. And that's so important because oftentimes men aren't taking care of themselves physically, mentally, spiritually, if you will. And a strong man understands that in order for him to provide or protect or whatever those titles that he has for himself, in order for him to be the best he can be, he's got to take care of himself in order to stay there for the long haul. And so it's understanding that those skills are important, and taking care of yourself is vital, not only for your own happiness and fulfillment, but for you as a person.
Yeah, I often, selfishness gets a bad rap. I think there's kind of an enlightened selfishness that is really selflessness. Right. Yeah. You need to be to be a good leader, a good dad, a good husband, a good business owner. There has to be some selfishness. You gotta fill your cup. You got to take care of yourself first, so that you can help others.
Absolutely, that's absolutely true. And you do have to, oftentimes one of the things that men tend not to do is take care of themselves physically, and that's very important. And I'm not necessarily talking about having to go to the gym 6 days, 7 days a week, or being in the gym for hours on end and fitness. Oftentimes fitness is one of those things that that is portrayed to men as far as like, that's something that you have to do. But it's more about being physically active more than it's about being in the gym, right? About building muscles. It's about being physically active and not just having this idea that you need to go to the gym all the time. So it is important for us to take care of ourselves. And as you mentioned, you've got to be able to stay in the fight, if you will, a little kind of like a military term there. You've got to be able to, the team is only as strong as its weakest link, right? And so you've got to be able to take care of yourself, even if you are a one-man team, right? This is not just for men who have families or um, children. It's also about taking care of yourself, because when you are happy and fulfilling, you're taking care of yourself, then you're able, as you mentioned, being a good husband, being a good father, being there for those who need you.
Cool. So have you always self-identified as a strong man, or are these kind of skills that you needed to work on yourself?
Yeah, that's a very good question. As in this process in working with men, I don't think that I've ever questioned like my manhood or my masculinity, if you will. But one of the things that and I think it came, I'm not sure, and I was very drawn to the military at a very young age, very, very young age. I had a father who went to Vietnam. I had a grandfather who served in World War II. And for some reason, and another uncle in the Korean War. And for some reason, my brother and I, we were just really drawn to that. But I must say that I had a very difficult childhood. And to the point where, I think I might have brought it up before, where, my father, he was a very unhappy and unfulfilled man, and the emotions that he had in dealing with that was let out in the form of anger and alcoholism. And my father, I remember, this kind of will sum up what I went through and as a child. And I remember I was about to finish my master's degree, and my father went and he lived in another state. He went to visit me a few months before I was to graduate. And I went to school later on in life. And so I was about to turn 40. And so my father, always had this up and down relationship with my father. And I remember my father and I, we were just having this casual conversation, just a father and son time together, having this just, I felt like it was my opportunity to finally ask him. I felt the moment was right. I felt like we had a good relationship. And him and I we were in my living room, and I'll always remember this. And I remember asking my father, why did he do what he did? And what I refer to that is how my father just, for lack of a better term, like spanked the shit out of my brother and I. And full force, there was no holding back. I mean, we couldn't do anything right without my father getting very rageful. And this had obviously been several years, and several things have gone on since then. And I asked my father, why did he do that? Why did he have zero mercy on me when it came to anything that I didn't fall under his standards? And without any hesitation, my father was sitting on the couch and he asked me, do you want to know the truth? And, the rhetorical question, and of course said yes. And he goes, it was to humiliate you. And I sat there and I'm thinking, he goes, and it was to humiliate you to do what I wanted you to do. And it was heart-wrenching, because it was like he just told me he wanted ice cream for dessert. It was nothing. And to me, I was thinking, out of all these years and all the struggles and all the things that have happened to me in my life as a result of having zero to no self-esteem growing up, my father in this moment knew, and it was the word humiliation. Like, I couldn't believe that he actually said that. And like I mentioned, it was like I just asked him what he wanted for dessert, and he mentioned ice cream, and it was just like, all right, great. And so for me, I had struggled all my life as a result of this, and had very, if any, low self-esteem. And so for me to eventually get to where I'm at today, and especially the aftermath of war, of divorce and so many things. You know, I think I've eventually gotten to the point where, you know, why I do what I do today is helping men not be like my father, right? Unhappy and unfulfilled, where they end up lashing out on other people. Because unfortunately, we hurt those that are closest to us because we have access to those people, right? And so for me, and dealing with my, you know, as a man, and I never really questioned that, but I definitely have doubted myself as a person. I'm 43 years old, and I just, you know, it's been, you know, several years now, but I feel like I am just now getting over those things, and many of the things that were a result of that childhood trauma.
Yeah, I mean, that's an astounding.
Yeah, I brought up a lot of things there. Right?
Yeah, and it's astounding question from you. Like, it's, you know, I've met parents that, you know, I thought, you know, to toughen you up to do, but I've never heard someone, oh, my goal was to humiliate you. Like,
absolutely.
Wow, it's like the kind of the ultimate in the town bully, just for fun. I just humiliate you.
And the thing is that, and it was just out of all the words he could have used, just like you mentioned, you know, to make sure that you and your brother were tough, or to make sure that you were strong. Because I was a very small kid. I weighed 116 pounds when I graduated from high school.
Wow.
I wrestled 103s in high school, 103 pounds. And the reason why I remember specifically that I weighed 116 pounds is because when I went to MEPS, which is the military in processing station, where you go to get examined, and then you get your final one before you go off to boot camp. And I went off to Marine Corps boot camp 10 days after I graduated from high school, which I actually graduated high school on my 18th birthday. So we're in MEPS. All of us are basically in our underwear, getting weighed and getting our weight taken. And I remember stepping on the scale, and whoever was looking at the scale or taking the measurements or the weight, after I stepped on there, he looks at it, he's like, 116 pounds. And I'm in a group of guys, and we're getting weighed, and we're about to leave for boot camp. And I was just so embarrassed, because I think for me, I was okay. But after he mentioned that, and it struck a chord in me, and like, it was a shock to my system, where it was like, and what ended up happening when I went to boot camp is they made me what they call a D-rat. D as in Delta rat, and that stands for double rations. So when I went through the chow hall line, I had this little tag on my uniform that said D-rat on it. So the servers knew to give me double of everything. So they didn't force feed me, but they made sure I ate a lot. And I ended up gaining like 16 pounds through boot camp, where there was some guys who lost 50 pounds in boot camp. So it's but so when I was young and my father was spanking me, embarrassing me, I struggled immensely with self-esteem. And I think, and I'll share another story with you. One time, my father, he struggled with alcoholism, and one time my brother and I went to go and visit with him. My father was drunk, and my father, there was this poncho, this wool poncho. He made me put it on. He made me put it on, and he made me start acting like I was Jesus. And my father, and he's drunk. I didn't, and I did whatever he wanted to do, because whatever I could deal with I could deal with him being drunk, but I just I wanted to do everything to keep him calm, so to the point where he wasn't spanking the shit out of me, And so he made me put on this poncho and made me start acting like I was Jesus. And he was like, raise your hands and praise the Lord. And he made me walk up and down his studio apartment at that time. He made me walk up and down his apartment, raising my hands, wearing this huge poncho, telling me to praise God. And my father was drunk, and all I wanted to do was just do whatever he wanted me to do. I just didn't want him to start, take out his belt to to spank me. And I remember seeing my brother's eyes and and having the fear uh, in his eyes, and thinking, what is our father going to have him do, and he never did anything, didn't make my brother do anything, but I just remember how hurtful that was, how embarrassing it was, even though it was just my father and my brother there, and I'm there, raising my hands up. And so I had these huge, these traumatic experiences in my life that really, were very impactful in my self-esteem, and how that was a huge struggle throughout my whole entire life.
Mm. So did your military experience, is that something that helped you build up your esteem again? And after being intentionally humiliated so much?
Yeah, as I mentioned, for some reason I was very drawn to military and discipline and those sorts of things. And I'm not sure if the military helped instill in me confidence, or help instill in me. Um, I think it had to do everything but the military.
Oh, really?
you know, um, I excelled physically. I never had an issue with physical training. It was, it was something that I was drawn to that life, and I was in the Marine Corps. I was also in the National Guard, and then I deployed to Iraq in 2009, 2010, and then came back from the war and dealt with that. But I can't really say that. I think it provided opportunities for me to discover things, that you just only experience when you're in the military.
Mm.
There's only, certain training that, unless you put yourself through it, right? But the military provides that opportunity for you to, stretch yourself, and to, I went through some very difficult training. I went through air assault training, which is one of the difficult trainings to go through in the Army. One of them, there are many. And then, also going through the Marine Corps boot camp and those sorts of things. But I think from a young age, I'd always been into personal development. And I did a lot of reading. I've done a lot of reading. And I think there was just something in me that just wanted to improve myself. And I really can't say that it was the military that provided me that opportunity to build self-esteem, because I think part of my low self-esteem is what didn't really necessarily allow me to excel in the military. So it was just kind of different things, but I think it was more my desire to want to improve my life for whatever way. I think for many years, as a young kid, I remember myself. It's quite interesting after learning about affirmations. Words that you repeat to yourself, or words that are uplifting. I remember as a kid, and this, mind you, I was still having a horrible childhood, but I remember the tape recorders, the handheld tape recorders, some of those cassette players, right? I grew up in the 70s, 80s, and we had these cassette players, and some of them can record your voice. I don't remember all of them. And I remember, and I don't know where I learned this. I don't know if I developed it myself. Maybe I saw something on TV. I don't know. But I would record myself saying encouraging things to myself, like, Anthony, you got this. Anthony, you're amazing. Anthony, you're great. Anthony, you're this. I don't know if it was like after watching a Rocky movie or something that I ended up like having this, and I would do that. And I didn't know I was doing affirmations, but it shows that I don't know. I just had this idea that I just wanted to be better than I was.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like you were actively coaching yourself. So
in some ways, it seems, yeah.
So what of all your experience led you to want to be a men's coach? Was that from an early age, or is it all, more recent, like an aha moment as an adult, or how did that unfold?
Yeah, that's a great question. So after my deployment to Iraq, or before my deployment, before I had returned home from my deployment, I made this promise to myself that I was going to take care of myself mentally, physically, and spiritually, not from a religious aspect. And I said this to myself before I even knew what was going to happen to me when I came back home, when I returned home. I remember I had to do a PT test while I was in Baghdad. And one of the things, part of the PT test is a 2-mile run. And I remember towards the end of this run, I could barely even breathe. And over there, it's not the best air quality. You have dust, you have vehicle exhaust, you have airplane exhaust, you have helicopter exhaust, you have all these things that you're being exposed to. And by the end of the run, I could barely even breathe, and let alone swallow. I felt like my throat was just caked with dust. So after the run, for a week, I could barely even swallow. I never even complained about this, but I could barely even swallow my saliva without it feeling like I was literally eating sandpaper. So it was, and it was just, I even look at pictures that I have that show the air quality. And this was even before my public health education. So I made a promise to myself that I'm gonna take care of myself when I get back. I'm gonna exercise, I'm gonna eat better, I'm gonna do great things. So anyhow, I come back from Iraq, and 2 months before coming back home, my then wife tells me she wants a divorce. So I come back home from deployment, getting a divorce, and I begin to struggle from PTSD, severe depression, anxiety, claustrophobia. I mean, it was bad. It was one of the things that really shook me, because I had never experienced anything like that before. I was hyper vigilant, I was hyper alert. I was like I was back in Baghdad. I was very, I always had to know if I went to an establishment. I always had to know where the exits were at. I always needed to know like how I could get out of a certain situation. I couldn't be around a lot of people. That was from the war, let alone what I had to deal with from my divorce. So long story short, at this time, I hadn't finished my education, and it was a goal of mine that I always wanted to finish my college degree. Well, long story short, I ended up completing a bachelor's degree in health promotion, health behavior, and a master's degree in public health. So after my education, I went for 6 years. I went and worked as a health educator for a health organization up in Alaska. And June is Men's Health Month. Now, most men don't know this, and I don't think I probably would have known had it not been for my public health education or for my, being where I was working at. And so I went to my boss, and I wanted to put on a men's health workshop for Men's Health Month. And I ended up conducting this workshop, and I did pre and post surveys for all the attendees. I wanted to know what information they knew beforehand and what information they became aware of as a result of the workshop. So it was from these surveys that I conducted that eventually led me to a moment where I began to reflect on all my education, from my public health education as an undergrad and as my master's degree in public health. And then not only those two things, but also my own struggles in dealing with PTSD, in dealing with my divorce. And a moment came to me where I realized there was nothing at this time, it's been 10 years now, for men to empower them, to encourage them to take care of themselves. And I began to talk to other men about their struggles. It was a small community. So I was able to, get to, have opportunities to talk with men individually and hear about their struggles and hear about and share with them the information that was revealed to me about. A lot of the men were, mentioned they wish they would have been exposed to this information years ago. Most of them were in their late 30s, early 40s. Many of them were married, had children of their own, and wished their kids, their sons had been exposed to this information or went with them to this workshop. And so it was a light bulb moment for me. I looked back at my education, and there was never anything particularly about men's health. There were women's health, there was women child maternity information that we went over, but nothing specifically for men. And oftentimes when a woman's wanting to conceive, what are some of the things they tell her? Well, be stress-free, take care of yourself physically, take folic acid, these sorts of things. Well, what information do men receive? We don't get anything. We're just like, we just do our thing, and that's how, a child is conceived, and we hope that it's all about taking care of the woman. But studies have shown it's just as important for men to be physically prepared, that they are taking care of themselves. They're providing half of the equation. But when it comes time to having a healthy child, there's nothing about men to be healthy, for them to stop smoking, for them to stop drinking, for them to prepare their body in order to have healthy sperm. But none of that is talked about. So what else is missing about that we're not talking to men about, and so that they are happy and fulfilled? And now you're seeing results such as these other things that, it's getting to the point where it's bad to be a man. And it's because there's never been this encouragement for men to take care of themselves so that they're happy and fulfilled, and not like more men like my father, who was not happy or fulfilled and ends up doing things that were obviously not good for your own child. Like your own child, to spank the shit out of them, to abuse them that way. And then of course, it wasn't just me, and I don't want to necessarily go into this, but of course it was the rest of my family, right? So that they end up suffering. But if he was happy, if he was fulfilled, if he had whatever he needed to deal with in a healthy way, he could have been a healthy or a better father. He could have been a better husband. He could have been a better, member to society, right? And so it was these moments that I look back at my life, and I look back at the struggles I've had. I haven't always been living my dream or being, as excited about life as I am right now. I was married for 12 years. I had my struggles in finding my life's work and my life's purpose, and went through so many difficulties. But as I begin to realize and look back at my past and struggles that I had as a young person, how that affected me throughout my life, and then looking at my education and what I learned from there, and then from this workshop and talking to men, and then looking at my own life when I was in the depths of my struggle in PTSD, anxiety, depression. There was nothing other than go to the gym and build muscles, right? It's kind of like the one thing that, for fitness and health for men, it's kind of like one of those things, join a CrossFit club, it was one of those things. But there was nothing deeper than that. It was nothing about building the skills to deal with the ups and downs. There was nothing about, one of the things we hear often now is about mental health, right? And knowing, as someone who has struggled immensely with the lowest self-esteem ever, I honestly don't think it's a mental health issue. It's a self-esteem issue. It's a lack of confidence issue. It's a lack of skills issues that help you. I have days where I'm sad. I get days where I'm depressed. Is that a mental health issue? No, it's a skill issue. It's realizing it's okay to have a down day. It's go and do something that brings you happiness. Go for a run. Go and do something. Watch a funny movie, or go and do something that brings up that energy in you, that happiness. It's not that I have a mental health issue. It's I have a skills issue that isn't allowing me to deal with this temporary moment where I feel lonely or I'm feeling depressed. Those are okay. We talk about real men have issues, right? We do. I'm human, and I have all the skills that I think I need in order to be happy and fulfilled. However, I do have days where I feel lonely. I do have days where I'm depressed. I do have days where I don't feel like I'm doing enough. But I know it's like, hey, I know I reflect on the things that I have accomplished. I reflect on the things that I know that I'm doing right. I reflect on the idea that I'm living my life dream, that I'm living the lifestyle that I've always had dreamed of. Those things I did. No one did them for me. I did them by base of the skills and the knowledge and the information that I have and that I give to clients, that they are now able to live happy and fulfilled lives. And not and so yeah, we talk a lot about mental health, but I don't think it's a mental health issue. I think it's a self-esteem issue. I think it's low self-esteem or lack of confidence issue, and lack of skills that are not prominent, unless that are not prominently educated for with people, unless they purposely go and seek to develop those skills.
Cool. So you've mentioned fulfillment a lot, and so I wonder, like, how would you define what does fulfillment mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. Fulfillment is different for everybody. Fulfillment could be someone, that they find fulfillment in their job. They find fulfillment in, the things that they do. Fulfillment for me, and this is coming from, years upon years of doing a number of different jobs, a number of different positions, a number of different things, and nothing ever hit me. Nothing ever, I didn't feel passionate about any of the work I was doing, except for my last quote unquote employed job, where I was a health educator. That job was phenomenal and I absolutely loved it, but I pursued my dream, in which I'm living today, but I loved that job. But before that, I didn't have any kind of fulfillment as far as the work I had. And I think the reason why I was feeling unfulfilled is because I felt inside of me that I had so much potential and I just wasn't living that potential. And I think that's where that fulfillment comes, and that's different for everybody. Someone could be finding fulfillment in having a podcast show. Someone can be having fulfillment in raising good children, right? Someone could be fulfilling as being a husband. Someone can have that fulfillment, but it does need to be something that they do find fulfillment in that is healthy, right? There could be bad things where people feel fulfilled. But fulfillment for me was realizing and recognizing something that I think has been part of me for so long, and that's helping other people.
So it's synonymous with meaning, like feeling whatever you're doing is fulfilling a purpose in you, some kind of a missing piece or something like that. Does that ring true?
Absolutely. I think so. I think deep inside each and every one of us, there is something that we want to give, right? There's something that meaning that comes to us. And that could be so many different things. The one thing that's really important, Andy, that I really want to make a point is that it can change. It's not one thing that goes throughout your whole entire life. And I'll give you an example. I know I had a client who was a fire chief, and he got into firefighting at a very young age. So he retired at 50. He was in his mid 50s. So he's 50 something. And I'll always remember this client because he came to me. He was a fire chief. I think the highest you can go in that, and being a firefighter. He was fulfilled in that, but he was struggling with what's next, because he's probably going to live another 20, 30, 40 years. But the biggest thing for him was how he struggled because his wife had a very good social network and he didn't have anybody. So now he's struggling with, okay, what's next? Doesn't feel like he has, good social life, sort of jealous, but women are good at maintaining relationships. Women are better at social interaction than we are maintaining relationships than us as men, unfortunately, right? But one thing about fulfillment is that it can change. And right now, This fulfillment is me being a men's coach, helping men also find that happiness and fulfillment in their life. Will it change 5 years from now? Will it change 10 years from now? I don't know, but I'm a young 43-year-old that I'm living my life to the fullest. I'm living my dream right now. And so fulfillment, it's a personal thing. Fulfillment can change, and that's okay because, I mean, yeah, if you find like perhaps I could for the rest of my life, working life, help people. But are there other things that I could potentially do that I would just be utterly amazed doing? Yeah, maybe one day I'll run travel trips, and that's my next thing, and that's what I find fulfilling, right? But fulfillment and meaning can change throughout one's life, right? As they go through the stages of life, right? Right now, maybe a man's fulfillment is raising his children.
Mm-hmm.
After his children leaves, it's finding that fulfillment in what he wanted to do. Maybe he wants to travel the world. Maybe he wants to take his job from being offline to online, whatever that may be. But as we go through stages of life, that fulfillment may change, and that's okay.
Cool. And do you find that most men value their own fulfillment, or is this something they're not even considering?
I honestly don't think men are even considering it. And here's the thing. I don't think there's much encouraging them to find fulfillment. And, you know, I get messages from women, emails telling me they appreciate what I'm doing. I have single mothers who listen to what I'm saying to partake or to share that information with their sons as they try to raise boys. I get messages from women wishing their husband would take coaching from me. But it's one of those things where, you know, it's that fulfillment that comes from, or it's that thing that comes from your own personal self, if that makes sense, you know.
Yeah, nobody can go, hey, Anthony, I bought you a box of fulfillment. Here you go.
Yeah,
yeah. You've got to find it. You've got to, yeah, it's.
Exactly. And as I mentioned, you know, oftentimes men aren't encouraged to find that fulfillment. And I know that I've gotten some backlash from people where it's like, well, men have had it easy. Men, you know, they get paid more, they do this, they get that. And it's like, you know, men do. And that's why I say I'm so grateful that you started your podcast and sharing this information with men, that real men feel. We do have our struggles. And oftentimes it's our own battle within our own minds where we're questioning, am I a man? Am I masculine? Am I this? Am I that? And it really comes down to what's your own definition, and let that be. And that could be you want to be the strong, muscular, you know, Navy SEAL kind of man. And if that's what you think is, and you're doing that and you're moving towards that, great. If you're not, but you still feel like you're the provider, protector, if that's what is your definition, then great. But you've got to be okay with, and this goes back to taking care of yourself, you know, asking yourself those questions, you know, what brings me happiness? What brings me fulfillment? And being okay with that. You know, I have a close friend who really enjoys training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And his girlfriend doesn't like that he trains just about every day. But it's his gym time. It's kind of like his thing. And that's what he loves to do. It's his thing. He's not doing it to compete around the world. He's just doing, it's that fulfillment that he has. That's something that he enjoys. And she wants him to dial it back. And it's just like, look, I love you. I enjoy this time. I enjoy this relationship, but I'm going to be honest with you. I am not going to stop training. You know, this is something that I enjoy. This is something that brings me fulfillment. This is something that it helps me in every aspect of my life. And I would just appreciate if you would support that. It allows me to be who I am with you. It allows me to be who I am as a man. And that's powerful because, you know, it would be one thing to say, hey, take it or leave it. It's like, but he mentioned, hey, I would want your support in this because, and explaining, not that he necessarily needs to explain himself, but to explain that this is something that I really enjoy. And it allows me to let out stress, let out frustration, but it allows me also to have a community of friends, a social network, and allows me to stay physically active, allows me to do something that is healthy for me. And hey, I encourage all men to find something that they truly find fulfillment, and hopefully they have someone who supports that, because it is important for men to find that fulfillment. And oftentimes, it's just a matter of making that effort and doing what is necessary in order to make it happen.
Yeah,
make it a priority.
It goes back to kind of the notion of being selfish, right? Yeah. I'm selfishly going to use this time. It may seem selfish to you, but no, because it makes me content and fulfilled and happier during all the rest of my time when I'm not doing this thing, right? When I'm with the other, when I'm with you.
Absolutely. And that was the important thing that I wanted him to stress to his girlfriend, was that, look, this allows me to be, you're attracting me for whatever reason, and this is something, if I couldn't train, if I couldn't do this, I would be miserable, I wouldn't be happy. It really brings it brings many aspects for him. It brings the social network, it brings the fitness of it. And there's so much research has already been done, and no one really needs to argue about it, that physical activity is good for the brain, and it allows you to think clear, allows you to think better. And when you're thinking better, you're feeling better. When you're feeling better, you're conducting yourself in doing the things that are important for you. When you're not letting that whatever's fulfilling for you, you're going to struggle. And then it's not to say that once, I find fulfillment in traveling, I'm just going to start traveling and, doing those things. It doesn't mean, there could be a process to it, to getting to that point, but it's definitely not going and saying, stop doing the things that, stop or get rid of all your responsibilities, right? There's things that it's not to say that I'm going to be a fulfilled and empowered man and I'm just going to stop doing all the things that, and it's not that. I'm not encouraging men to, do things that, I'm just going to stop working and, do the things that make me happy. It's like, right, yeah.
Fulfillment on a whim without a plan doesn't usually work well. I'd say that.
Yeah. You still, the repercussions of you just doing that you're going to eventually deal with the repercussions, the consequences of that. And that's not going to bring happiness and fulfillment in you. So it's just part of it, but it is a process, and that's okay. And that's why, with my coaching clients, it's a process. It's not an overnight thing. And that's what I enjoy helping men, is just developing that light bulb moment, saying, look, where you're at right now is totally fine. Right? It's, where you're at right now is accepting the fact of where you're at right now, and that you want to change. And now it's all about focusing on this present moment and creating that future that you want. And you can't go back, right? The past is done. It's over with. Just like for me, I can't say, I wish I would have went to college when I was in my 20s. I wish I would have started traveling when I was, it's like, no, like that's done and over with. But now, I'm living the ultimate lifestyle, but it was a process. It wasn't overnight, and that's okay. And then once men hear that and take a deep breath and let it out and be like, okay, I can accept that. Let's get a plan and let's move on. Let's go from there. And that's an exciting moment for me.
Why do you think so many men are resistant to seeking any sort of help to begin with?
Well, it goes back to that whole thing of, that a man should be able to do everything on his own. And that, if it's going to happen, he's the one who's going to do it. And you look at any successful person, they didn't do it on their own. Someone could have written 100 books. And I can tell you right now, They had very good editors, right? No matter what. I mean, even in my own business, I have people who help me. I don't do the editing. I don't do the images. I have people who do all that help and support me in my business and allow me to live the lifestyle that I live. And the thing is that it is, I think there is beginning to be a little bit of or some change in that, where men are now looking for that help. They're looking for that support in developing those skills that I mentioned. You know, there are skills that need to be built, you know, developing that confidence, developing that self-esteem. And we often think that self-esteem, oh, well, that's a kid's thing. No, self-esteem is how you think about yourself, how you feel about yourself and think about yourself. Back in the day, that's what it was called. It was called self-esteem, low self-esteem. Now it's called mental health. And I don't know, you know, it's tough because there is a differentiation of true mental health issues like schizophrenia, you know, bipolar. These sorts of things are serious mental health issues. But so many people put in self-esteem as a mental health issue. And I don't, but there's that stigma, right? There's that stigma of mental health. And that's where people don't, or, you know, men in this case don't go for help because they don't want to, you know, have this idea that they have a mental, quote unquote, mental health issue. But it's not. And so the struggle that I think men have is going back to the idea that they need to do it all on their own. And like, you know, I don't need help type of mentality or attitude, where men are, I think, slowly beginning to seek out that help, although they're now starting to seek out coaches more than they are therapy. Either one is great, but one thing that I want to point out is therapy is good. And I went through therapy, but therapy is about dealing with the past. Coaching is about dealing with this present moment and moving forward. Well, things maybe have to be discussed as far as like what was successful or not successful in the past, you know, what things, kind of getting a picture, but it's not putting that energy towards the past. I remember when I was going to therapy, it was all about what my dad did, what my mom did, what my brother did, what I, you know, all these things that I went through, my aunts and uncles, just all this stuff of the past. And when you put all that energy in the past, how much energy do you have in this present moment in working towards what you really want in your life? Yeah. It's very little, right? So it's that understanding, and it's podcasts like yours, Andy, that help men to come to the realization that it's okay to seek help, whether it is therapy at the beginning. That's okay, but just to understand that therapy is about focusing on the past, and coaching is about, okay, I've dealt with the past. Hey, I'm all about moving forward. I have a goal. I have an idea of what I want to be. I want to be working towards that, because one of the biggest things about coaching is this. It's about co-creating a plan and then having that accountability and working that plan. Mm-hmm. A therapist is not, and there's times, and I'll be honest, there's times as a coach, you got to share a little tough love, right? There's those times. A therapist isn't going to do that. A therapist is just going to listen to you and kind of let you, talk about it and kind of let you come to your own realizations, which is fine to realize, some light bulb moments, right? And realizing, some of these things that happened in your past are impacting your future. But there's a time where it's enough talking. It's enough emphasis on the past, and it's about creating a plan and an action and start taking action towards what you really want, because you can't change the past. It's done. It's over with. It's gone. Deal with it. Yes. I'll never tell anybody don't go to therapy. I'm not, in that position to do that. But I know what has helped me. And it wasn't until I went to 7 years of therapy, 7 years of just wanting things to change. And I felt like I had done everything that I needed to do in dealing with my past. But it wasn't until I started focusing on what I really wanted to live and the person that I wanted to be and the kind of life that I wanted to live. And that what was the most important thing is that I came to realize. And that's part of why I became a coach too, is like, and that's who I end up attracting to me and my clients are those men who have done enough talking. I just had someone call me the other day and they're like, you know what? And actually email. I've just just in the last week, I've talked to one guy who started therapy and he was like, it's too soft for me. I'm tired of talking about the past. I want to move toward the future. Now, don't get me wrong, with that one person I'm referring to, years ago, he did go to therapy. It did help him. And that was great. It moved him on. But he was now into another period of his life, went to therapy. He's like, no, that's not what I want. I need coaching and I need to move forward. That was one. Another gentleman is like, I've done all that. I've read all the books. I've watched all the motivational YouTube videos. I've done other coaching. Hey, I'm ready to move forward. Enough of the past, enough of this temporary motivational stuff. No, I need to develop the skills, the confidence, and the ability to develop the kind of life I want and start moving towards that. And that's what coaching is all about.
Right. Cool. So the guys that do come to you, the people that you work with, what are some of the most common struggles that they're facing today?
Their lack of fulfillment, their lack of what they want in their life. That's what I see often. Men do come to me when they are struggling with, it comes down to that confidence. It comes down to, I want to say masculinity, but there's also time there. It's not so much like, am I a man? Am I not? It's just, there are skills that are good, such as leadership skills that, we would kind of categorize. I mean, everybody could be a leader, right? But it's, I'll give you an example. I had, and it goes back to where I was contacted by a wife of a gentleman who's like, I would like for my husband to have coaching from you. And I explained, it's a personal thing and it's really it's going to take work and he's going to want to do this work. So here's my information, have him contact me. So he did. And after talking to him, and it sounding like it was more, he was doing it for his wife, it come to, after we got talking, that, it was at the point where she wanted him to develop more masculine traits, as we would call masculine traits, being more assertive, taking leadership role. His wife was tired of making all the plans. She was tired of making all the decisions. And he did have a feeling of, you know what? I should be doing this stuff. I should be more of a leader in my home. I should be making more of the decisions. I should be making more of the plans. In the sense, of course, I'm not going to say this has to be for everybody, but in this case, right, she was basically threatening divorcing him if he did not develop these qualities. But the one thing that was different was that he wanted to develop these qualities. So I have gotten men who are like, I'm not feeling strong here, whether that's, their definition of masculinity or their desire to be like, look, I need to be more assertive. I need to learn how to be more assertive. I need to learn how to speak up. I need to learn to, make plans. I need to learn how to do these things. And that goes back to, why wasn't he like that before? Whether it was something he was just never exposed to, whether it was something he just never had the opportunity to develop, these sorts of things. So for him, it was, I want to be more of a leader. I want to be more of a decision maker. And I really enjoyed this client. And in fact, I work on a 3-month basis. And he just kept repeating, it's like, I don't want to fall back and I want to keep going. And it was just so amazing to see when he started developing these assertive qualities, how his wife responded to that. Now, I'm not going to say that this is what, a lot of females want, but there is this idea of and that word assertive could kind of be taken misconstrued, right? It's like, having your way or anything like that. It's not in a sense that it's more of like, I'm gonna make a decision based off of all the information, and that's what we're gonna do and stuff. But she responded to it, and he was so like, wow, this was so crazy. Like, she just wanted him to be more, and she was threatening divorcing him if he didn't develop these qualities. So she has an idea, and they'd been married for a long time. I think it was close to 20 years that they'd been married. And so, he has a son, 8-year-old son. And so for him, he wanted to develop these assertive qualities. And it was just amazing to hear his changes. And one of the things that he ended up doing, which I think is a phenomenal idea, and I think every man, and this goes back to finding that fulfillment and happiness in your life, that every man should take a trip with a buddy, with a group of guys every single year. And it was one of the ideas that I had for him, but the opportunity arose for him. And at the beginning, his wife was happy about the idea. Like, yeah, I want you to go on a trip with your friend. And it was a friend that he lived 15 minutes away, but rarely ever saw. They were very good friends at one time, but they lived 15 minutes away. And they were going to go on this week-long trip. Well, into the planning of the trip, she started having these hesitations, like started kind of giving him some problems. And he had to be assertive, say, look, I'm going to go. I really want to go on this trip, and I want to spend some time with my friend, and I'm going to go. And at the beginning, you were very supportive. I'm going to ask that you continue to support me. And it was just phenomenal. And then he did go on the trip. She didn't bother him during the trip. And he felt so good about himself, about taking that trip, spending that time with his friend, going and seeing other friends along the way that they both have. They've known each other for a long time. And how he was, now he didn't just say, no, I'm going on this trip, and you need to do this. No, it was like, look, I'm going to do everything I can so that while I'm away, because they have a child, 7-8-year-old child, everything that I can so that you're supported while I'm gone, getting the kid, because his parents and her parents live very close. So it was like, okay, I'm gonna make sure that my parents have them this day. And he made sure that she was gonna be taken care of the whole entire week. So that was part of it, right? Like, he was not just gonna say, no, I'm gonna go on this trip and that's it. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm encouraging. But to express how important that is. And if that's something that's brings happiness, like, yeah, I'm going to go on this trip with my friend. And that's what I'm, and that's what's going to bring me happiness and fulfillment. And that's where you hope you have a supportive spouse, significant other. And there's those things that often I find men respond to and just don't have the courage or the skills to do that. Now, I did have to coach them on how to best prepare and to gain her acceptance. It's not like asking her for permission, right? Because it's like, hey, this is something I really want to do, but to more of it being supportive. And she was happy about the idea, right? And then she was also happy that he was like, no, we made this decision at the beginning, and no, I'm gonna go on this trip. After she kind of started giving him a little bit of problems, I'm not sure if that was the result to kind of see if he was gonna do the, stay within his ground and not back down like he, tend to, I guess, the last 18 years that they were together. So it's just
well, it's kind of common that
different things,
especially in relationships, that I want you to change. I want to make that change too. And then change starts. And the person's like, wow, this change is happening. And then so they can, it can ebb and flow both ways of good. Oh, I'm not so good. Like it does. Yeah. Change and growth in one person affects the relationship in ways that you can't always predict. Yeah.
Absolutely. And you're right. And it brings up another point where he has an only child, and only children have certain things that they can struggle with in life if it's not taken care of as children. And one of those things is this kid gets a ton of attention. So everything is on him. And in fact, no one in the family gets Christmas presents except this kid. So can you imagine if they continue on this route, that eventually when this kid grows up and realizes the world doesn't revolve around him and his desires at every whim. So he started changing the way he was raising his son to understand, like, look, and started telling him no more, because it's just an only child. Him and his wife have very good jobs and they make very good money. So the kid could go without, or is not going to go without anything. But in understanding that the kid was, he's 8 years old now, and, he needs to start putting in the work now, because if he doesn't, he's going to be, struggling when that child becomes a teenager. And so through coaching, he began to realize that he needed to change his parenting in working with his son also. And his wife noticed that. And there were some things she liked and started noticing, but she did end up noticing some of the things. So you're right. As someone changes and that energy changes and those things, aren't the same as they used to, it could be good or bad, right?
Yeah. I mean, even change we want can trigger things in us and bring up fears and apprehension and, is this really what I wanted after all? And, it all goes with it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I want to get to where you live, because I find this interesting. So where do you live, Anthony?
I live in Medellin, Colombia.
Yeah.
And I've been living here for almost 2 years now. And I had a dream of living in a Spanish-speaking country. I wasn't fluent before I came, although I do come from a Latino background. Learning Spanish was not encouraged to me, so I'd always wanted to live in a Spanish-speaking country. So about 2 years ago, I picked a date. All that I was doing was online. I actually didn't have my podcast at the time. And so my podcast is just under 2 years old, not as long as yours. So I wish I would have come across your podcast. But I'm glad I did, because I was thinking, man, more information for men needs to be out there. but who knows? It's all good. So I picked a date, picked a time. All the stuff that I do is all online, so I don't need to be in one location. Mm-hmm. And I actually went to Bogota, and went to Cartagena, then to Medellin. Then I went to Italy, came back to Medellin, and just absolutely fell in love with the place. I was going to continue on south. I've lived in Ecuador before. I love Ecuador. Thought that's where I was going to be. I wanted to continue all the way south down to Chile. However, Medellin is my home, and I do travel. I did make it to my goal in visiting far south of Chile. And so now I had always wanted to, two things. One, do something I'm very passionate about, which is helping people and being able to do it from anywhere in the world. And I have chosen for now to be in Medellin, because I absolutely love it. I do train in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So when I first came here, it had been several years since I hadn't trained in Jiu-Jitsu. So I was like, hey, I could get back into Jiu-Jitsu. I could be learning Spanish, and I could just be enjoying my life. And I have been doing that ever since. Jiu-Jitsu a little off and on, now a little more consistent, but Spanish is getting a lot better. And I am just, I do travel. I'll be traveling in June again, but traveling is a very big part of my life. I've learned so much about myself. I know you mentioned you've been to 17 different countries. I'm sure that has had an impact in your life. It has had an impact in my life, in my worldview, and different people and cultures and traditions. Absolutely has opened my worldview up, and has allowed me to be the person who I am today because of it. And so being here, I absolutely love it. So cool. This is where I'm at.
Yeah. So I've been, visited Costa Rica and Belize, Guatemala, Ecuador, Chile, and I've met Americans and a lot of government people that retire, and CIA and military, all these places. But Colombia never crossed my mind. And, my stereotypical vision of Colombia is drug cartels and super violent. But you said that's just not the case.
Yeah. And I'm so glad you bring that up, because, I'm somebody who wants to live in peace. I'm somebody who wants to live comfortably. I want to enjoy my life. I don't want to walk out my door thinking I need to be holding or, carrying some kind of be armed or, that's not the kind of life I want to live. And so I definitely would not be calling this home if that was the case. But that's the unfortunate idea. And that's what traveling has done for me, is open my eyes up to the idea that the media just wants to portray all these negative things about many different countries. And unless you've been there and have lived it and know what you're talking about, there's nothing, of course, there are bad things that happen in every country, in everywhere, throughout the United States, in every country. The unfortunate thing is, for news, what do they portray? All the bad stuff that happens. Even where I'm originally from in California, there's crazy things that happen. But I wouldn't want to live there, and I don't, for a reason. And so and that's what happens when you visit another country and you meet the people and you come to understand as best you can the cultures and the traditions and things, and understand their struggle. And for me, I would not call this home if that's how it was, or I had to watch where I was going. Are there bad people everywhere? Absolutely. Are there bad things that happen? Absolutely. But there are people who live quiet, amazing, enjoyable lives that it's not what the media portrays. Of course, there is that history of Colombia, and Colombians do everything they can to get past that. I mean, you can't deny the history that they had of the past, but it's a beautiful country. I absolutely love it. I've had amazing experience here, and I absolutely love it. It made it a place for me to live, and I have a lot of good friends. I know a lot of veterans, war veterans, who live here and have absolutely no desire to ever return back to the United States. For their own reason, right? It's quite interesting that many of us served our country and love our country, but have absolutely no have absolutely no desire to ever go back for whatever reasons, right? Quality of life, they just found their happy place, or maybe they found their significant other here. There's many different reasons, but I have heard from several veterans, and I'm part of a very big veteran group here, that many of them often say that when they do visit the United States, they can't wait to get back to the place they call home. So it's different for everybody, so there's not really one specific reason why. I'm sure there's part political for some, there's part lifestyle, there's many different reasons, thousands of reasons, but from what I've experienced and from the friends that I have, they have absolutely no desire to ever go back.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it strikes me as a little sad too. But I'm glad all those guys are happy where they are. So that's definitely the upside of it all.
And that's the thing, is that they're happy and fulfilled. Whether for whatever reason they are here and choose not to go back. It's not that they don't love their country. They fought for their country. They fought for the ideas of the country. But I know that they served, and that they're happy and they're fulfilled. And if that's somewhere else outside of the United States, then that's what we need, right? It doesn't matter where or who, where people are from, but that they do find that fulfillment. They do find that happiness in their life. We need more people to be happy and fulfilled in this life, or in this world. And it doesn't matter where they come from. All my clients are from the United States. I don't do coaching here in Colombia, but all my clients are from the United States, and more than happy that more American men are finding happiness and fulfillment, and that they are able to do things that bring them joy and happiness, whatever that might mean for them, and for them to develop those skills, that self-esteem and that confidence for them to go after their dreams and their goals. So it's exciting.
Cool. Well, I will definitely put Colombia on my travel list now.
Absolutely.
So thank you for that, opening my eyes and mind to that possibility. And
that's great.
What's the best way for people to learn more about you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so there's two ways. One, they can visit me at strongmencoaching.com. That's my website there. They can learn a little bit more about me. Also, my podcast, Strong Men Podcast. You can listen to that on iTunes, Stitcher, and on the website at strongmenpodcast.com.
Awesome. Well, Anthony, thanks for sharing so much of your experience and how you're helping others. I really appreciate your openness, your vulnerability about your very personal and painful story growing up. And I'm glad that you have found your happiness and fulfillment. And I'm thrilled that you're helping more people find that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And, for all those that are listening, I would encourage you to reach out to Andy, reach out to him, reach out to really whoever you have a connection with. If you're wanting to move forward, the past is the past. Unfortunately, we can't change that. Do I wish I could change it? Absolutely. It would have saved so much heartache, so much pain in my life if I could go back and just talk to my dad and be like, can you just, this is going to affect me for almost the rest of my life, for a big part of my life, and perhaps in some ways still is, right? Because now I'm helping men what I wish maybe my father had access to, whatever that happiness and fulfillment that he would have been able to have zero desire to humiliate his own children, and thinking that was going to help them out later on in life, And so for me, so I just want to encourage you to, if you're ready to move forward, to seek out a coach that you could connect with and reach out and move forward in the kind of life that you desire, because it is possible. There's more men like me who are living their dreams. There's more men like Andy who are finding that happiness and fulfillment in what he does and what they do. And you could be the same. You don't have to become a coach or therapist or anything like that, but you could find that happiness and fulfillment in your life as a husband, as a father, as a member of society. And the more you're happy and fulfilled, the better you are going to be in whatever you want to be, whether that's a better husband, a better father, a better person, a better son, whatever it may be for you, but that you can move forward in your life and realize that whatever situation that you're in, not to diminish your situation, but there are people who have overcome immense odds in this life, and you can have a life that you're happy, that you're fulfilled, and you're proud of. So in that, I want to encourage you to reach out and to not let any kind of stigma get in the way of you getting that help and that support that you need, because we all need it.
Yeah,
all of us need it.
Thank you for all of that, Anthony. And yeah, I totally believe everybody's here for a reason. We all have a purpose, and nobody's purpose is to be a miserable bastard. Nobody's purpose is to beat their kids. Like where life is supposed to feel good, right? Yeah. This is a magnificent gift we all have, and absolutely. It's up to us. It's up to each one of us to take advantage of that, to take responsibility absolutely. For that, and to pursue absolutely. Those goals. And to be selfish, right? To live a life that feels good, to live, yeah. Find fulfillment, to find the place that makes you happiest to live, to find the work that makes you happiest. We are all worthy of that.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Anthony. Thanks everyone for listening. And until next time, be good to yourself. Bye.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Real Men Feel. Contact us at realmenfeel@gmail.com. Learn more about Andy Grant at theandygrant.com. Please subscribe to this podcast and leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, or wherever you are discovering Real Men Feel.